Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Ship and Read. Today I'll be doing my 2023 stats. Before I get started, if you're new to this channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below as well as the notification bell. And if you're new, hi, hello, I'm Stephanie and I do a lot of bookish content, and I feel like everyone already did this in 2023, but I'm like, how did you accumulate these stats when the year has ended? So I'm here now on New Year's Day filming this with all the stats of the books I read in 2023. So let's just get right into it. Okay, to start off with my 2023 year in review from Goodreads, this is going to be a quick run through stats of my reading because I feel like this is not really accurate. It did say like newly completed books appear after a delay, and I know that I had just finished a book late last night, so that's probably why it's missing one book. But it says I read a total of 212, but I read 213 books in 2023. So my stats are gonna be a little skewed, to be honest. Like not by much though, maybe like, because that was a manga, so it was about like 200 pages. And then in terms of pages read, it said that I read 74,084 pages, so pretty freaking good, I think, in 2023. Then it says my shortest book I read this year was Comfort Me with Apples, which was a total of 103 pages. And my longest book was also one of the books I just finished recently, and that is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This book was 880 pages. So I didn't actually go past the 1,000 page mark this year, which is fine because that was never a goal of mine. I'm just surprised that my thickest book was this one for some reason. It says my average book length was 349 pages. My most shelved was The Night Circus, which I finally read, good riddance. 2,213,659 people have shelved this book. My least shelved was What I Want You to See, which was only 971 people. Then my average rating for 2023 was 3.7. I think that's better than last year. And then my highest rating on Goodreads was Fourth Wing with an average of 4.6. Honestly, not surprised there. My first review of the year was Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko, which I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed that book, or 4.5 stars, sorry. So those are my stats from Goodreads. And then I also have my little chart here, which I always do every year. This is kind of like how I organize all of my books I read. So let's just kind of go through my stats on my own Excel sheet and then also compare it with 2022 because I feel like there is some comparison there that I find very interesting. So hopefully I can put everything here. So in terms of rating, for 2023, it says that my most rated was 4 stars with 83 books, which is not that surprising. I didn't really read that many bad books this year because my 5 stars was actually higher than my 3 stars. And then I didn't really have a lot of 1, 2, and a 2.5 star, which is good. I always like to see that. I do think there's too many though, because I really prefer to have like less than 10, but I have a total of 15 books that were 1, 2, and 2.5 stars. So we'll like to receive that reduced in 2024. And then I read 47 books that were 5 stars. So honestly, not too bad. But then if I compare that with 2022, I read way more 5-star reads, but I think it's also my manga that I picked that year. I think there was like 75 volumes or something. So I read a total of 85 5-star books that year, and I feel like they're all manga, or majority of them were manga. But I definitely had more 2.5 stars and under. I had 18 books. So I did reduce that a little bit in this year, but I'm hoping to reduce it even more in 2024. All right, moving on to my next stat for 2023, I have pages read. So I honestly should make this a lot more like every 100 pages just to really like pinpoint it, but I don't really care about this too much, so it's whatever. Under 200 pages, I read 28 books, and then most of my books I read were 200 to 499, and that was 163 pages. And I only read 22 books that were 500 and up. Let me compare that with my 2022. I only read 16 books that were 500 pages up. So honestly, I think I did better this year. In terms of just getting a little bit more of my chunkier books read. And then in terms of form of reading, I read most of them as audiobook, which I am not surprised. I go through them really quickly. I read a total of 118 books that were audio, which is about 55.5%. And then physical, I read 60 books, which is 28.2, which honestly is not very high, honestly. But to be fair though, I feel like my fantasy is all my physical books, and a lot of my non-fantasy like romance, contemporary, thrillers, all of that, I tend to read that as audiobook. So more genres are read through audio, hence why this number is a lot larger. And then for ebooks, 35 books, which is my manga series. Comparing this with 2022, I read less audiobook, honestly. I only read 91, so I only read 40% that were audio. My physical was more or less the same, like 26, 28%, so they're about the same. But my ebook, I definitely read a lot more ebook in 2022, but again, all my manga was there. I didn't finish a manga. I feel like if I had finished my manga series, this number would have been a lot different because I read all of my manga through an ebook. But anyways, moving on to the next stat, which is genres. So this is interesting because historically, fantasy has been a very predominant number of mine, and it still is, but as you can clearly see from this chart, romance is getting there. It's like 22%. So pretty high with my romance, and then I have a good amount of mysteries and contemporaries. If I combine romance with contemporaries, which sometimes they are kind of like intertwined with each other, that percentage would be significantly, like very close to fantasy. So I thought that was really interesting because if I look at 2022, my fantasy is significantly more and my romance was only 8%. I only read 8% that were romance in 2022, but this year I read like 22%, like huge increase. And then my mystery and thriller were always about the same with contemporary, so not much change there, but my romance definitely jacked up a lot in this year, so I thought that was really fascinating. I read age ranges. This was another one that I found really fascinating because this year, as you can clearly tell, my adult and YA honestly were pretty much similar. They were both about like 43-45%, so like basically they're even now at this point. And I definitely read a lot more new adult this series, so I mean I read like a good almost 9% of my books were new adult. But then if I compare this with 2022, it's so different. Like 3/4 were YA and then 1/4 was adult. Middle grade was 1 book. Like that was it for 2022. But this year though, I definitely read a lot more adult books. I think that's just me reading just changing over time, so not surprised there, to be honest. I have noticed I haven't been picking up as many YA books this year. All right, month of reading. So this is also interesting as well because as you can clearly tell from this graph that March and December were really high for me. I read a total of 30 books in March and then 31 books in December. So I don't know what those 2 months did, but they were great months in terms of my reading. So I mean December makes sense because I did that last chance vlog, which I really like wanted to read and sit down, but then I had a really bad month in terms of January and October. So yeah, I mean I don't really have any correlations there, but I found that interesting. And then in terms of 2022, let's compare very quickly. So 2022 is interesting because I read the most book in October last year. Like that's crazy to me. I read a total of 48 books in October, but then this year October was my lowest. Like yeah, like I read so little in October. So very interesting stats overall. September and October are great in 2022. All right, then my next stat is like genders, so author genders. So this year I read almost 78% female and then 22% that were male authors. In 2022, I definitely read more male authors. I read 38%, almost 39%, and then 61% that were female. So it's just interesting to see, you know, the difference there. Not surprised, to be quite honest. All right, and then my last stat that I want to talk about is author if they're a person of color. So over here it says that, and this was one I found very interesting because I feel like I usually make this a priority of mine, but this year I read 64% that were not authors of colors and then only 36% that were. So I don't know, that is so odd to me because I feel like I do read a lot, but I guess not. Because 2022, it was the complete opposite. I read 60% that were person of color and then 40% that were not. So the numbers essentially like almost switched. Like that is so crazy to me. But yeah, I mean that just means in 2024 I need to really focus and make this a priority again. I also do think that my manga helped because those are always person of color, and last year I read a series that was like 75 books. So that was already 75 books that were a person of color, and this year I only read like 35. So that is a huge difference of 40 books that were, you know, the difference there, but it's fine. So anyways, those are all the stats I have for you for this year in 2023. I just find it so interesting. Like 2022, my best reading month was October. 2023, my worst reading month was October. That is like literally at odds of each other. But anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know down below what your reading was like in 2023. Did you find some interesting stats in your reading? Do you do stats in your reading? Because I feel like not everyone does it. Did you find any of my stats that was really interesting, that you're like, that's interesting? Anyways, let me know down below. But as always, if you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And if you like to see more content of me, please don't hesitate to subscribe down below, as well as the notification bell. And as always, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.